home and who are quarantined away and who don't have a lot of fights right now, these are the types of guys that you want to put out there to get the ball rolling and get fans excited about boxing again.
We're going to be doing some jumping around.
Between the protocols they would be using with the Mexico City fights in the studio environment, fanless, and what we could see in Nevada?
And Joe, there's a concrete protocol established by the protocol, the health questionnaire that each fighter plus one cornerman will have to fill out prior to being quarantined under medical supervision for 14 days in the Mexican Olympic Center. Fighters will be there.
Let's read this. So, fighter and one team member will fill out a health questionnaire. Fighters will quarantine at the Mexican Olympic Center. This is, I believe, June the 6th. Miguel Burchelt's card. They will be subject to 3 COVID-19 tests, 1 day arrival, 7 days for the fight and the weigh-in. They will have scheduled times for individual training and meal service. You know, let me just start off the video by saying this. Listen, I don't have any confidence. Here, well, let me let this play. Just mute it so it won't stop. I don't have any confidence like that we're going to have in person, like, arena fights. Like, you know how, like, if you're at a fight, you're standing in like concession line and shit. You imagine people like getting drunk and all. I don't see a T-Mobile Arena fight in September, October, November, going into our next flu season here in the United States. I don't see it. You know? And one of the big issues I have is that we're not, well, when it comes to boxing, I get it. You know, we're not owed anything. But it seems as though when it comes to PBC, from what we're hearing from them, they're still trying to go through with pay-per-views. You know, when everybody is just like bowing out, like, all right, we got to do studio shows. Now, I've come already to, you know, accept the fact that the quality of a lot of these fights are going to be A side versus C side and D side and motherfucking fuck around to be J sides and shit, you know? But they're trying to quench our thirst, you know, especially when you think about how long can these fighters be on the shelf? How many fighters right now are getting fat? You know, let's listen to some more of this. I'm sorry, we got to jump around. This is on ESPN Plus. You can watch this. It's called State of Boxing with Joe Tessitore, Bernardo Osuna, Andre Ward, and Mark Kriegel.
For those fights to be picked up and shown in primetime TV, Dre, some pretty big names down there in Mexico willing to go fanless as well.
Yeah, I love all the names that you just mentioned. You know, the Burchelts, the Navarretes, those guys will fight anywhere, anytime, against anybody for the most part.
For the fight, and on weigh-in day, they will also have scheduled times for individual training and meal service, and facilities and means of transportation will be constantly sanitized. In terms of production details, the judges, as of right now, but it's negotiable, are supposed to watch the fights in a remote studio, but they're trying to get the judges to be in the venue. The broadcast.
Also, what do you think about that? Judges in a remote studio. Like, how will it be monitored? Man, that, you know. Now, we wanted judges to have monitors. At least I know I did. But, man.
You know, kind of put in there on all four sides as virtual reality fans, really, to try to give somewhat of an ambiance. So they're trying to give it more of a vibe than what we saw with the return of UFC.
They've now a new schedule coming up of fights over in
About how much money can I make, and then we'll decide who's the best on the back end. To fight often. Navarrete is the same way. But the fighters as a whole, this day and age, they're just different, Joe. They're not built the same. There's obviously with social media and guys being able to go out there and push their name without fighting. Fighting is a hard sport, as we know. Training camp is extremely hard, and guys typically don't want to do that until their money gets low or unless there's a big money on a big fight, money fight on the horizon. They're just not built the same. It's not about just who's the best anymore. It's about how much money can I make, and then we'll decide who's the best on the back end.
Very good point, champ, with the exception of Navarrete, who already did it and was sent home. The bottom line, though, is this. A combat sport was successfully put on.
Hold on, I don't want to get copyrighted. You know, I guess they were talking about, before I go back and watch it later on, I was supposed to watch it earlier today, is that, there are some fighters that would rather sit on the shelf. There are some fighters who, are like, look, I know, my promoter or my manager or my advisor going to take care of me, and, we don't have to get out there, But at the same time, you're still, even though you're not taking damage, you're not fighting, you're not training, it's still an extra year, and, fighters are going to get rusty. You see what I'm saying? So I know that there's going to be some fighters like, I'm not fighting in front of without no crowd. Well, then you just not going to fight, not going to make no money. You should, if anything, you should be as active as fuck right now, like collecting those checks, especially when you have the potential of getting, like more exposure or bigger exposure. In my personal opinion, somebody like Terrence Crawford, he shouldn't have no issue. I mean, I'm not saying shouldn't, but, it's like, it's not like you were, smashing gate sales unless it was in Omaha. Fight, him and Kell Brook or whoever, get us a fight with no crowd. Jose Ramirez versus Victor Postol. Can you do that with no crowd? But see, this is not UFC where the fighters are making, the top fighter on the event is making $300,000, $500,000. These guys are making big money, and that gate money be mattering. Even if it don't be a lot, depending, on the fight, or the fighter. No disrespect for somebody like Gary Russell, maybe Iris Lindy Lara, Sean Porter when he fought up in fucking, whatever they call it now, Dignity Health Park Center or some shit. They, my understanding, they write that shit off. Give out free tickets, they write that shit off. But people like Canelo, people like Golovkin, people like, Anthony Joshua, fight without a crowd, gonna cost a lot of money, because those ticket sales, they make a dent. They move the needle, as it's being said. So with the upcoming fights that we're supposed to get, the first is supposed to be Top Rank back on June the 9th, and then that's on like a Tuesday, right, or some shit, right? When is June the 9th? Let me pull up on the calendar real quick. It's on a Tuesday. And then we're supposed to have more fights after that. But the quality of the fights, you're going to have champions defending their belts. What is it? Jamel Herring versus Jonathan Oquendo. His name being floating around. But nothing that's really, really going to, And remember, the athletic commissions right now, they're not all in unison. Money is making a lot of this shit turn. So in regards to when boxing's going to be back, boxing's going to be back. The level of quality of fights. I mean, we already seen UFC has already been, and WWE hasn't missed a beat. So UFC has put on 3 events. They're having another one next weekend, May the 30th, next week. So as it stands right now, why can't boxing come back? But one thing they're going to do is, in my personal opinion, I'm glad it's Top Rank bringing it back. My shit is falling down. Damn it. I'm glad it's Top Rank bringing it back, because at least we know they're going to do that shit right. Damn. The adhesive tape came off. At least we know, they have that experience to do the shit right. Damn. Is it an earthquake? No. I jury rigged it, though. So that top one's going to fall too. So I don't know, man. I'm just at a point where, I'm accepting of what it's going to be. But one thing I don't like is when boxing does return, they're going to hit us with so many pay-per-views, probably maybe 5, 6 straight. No bullshit. Remember, we already got Errol Spence versus Danny Garcia. That's going to be pay-per-view. It's going to be pay-per-view. Loma versus Teofimo. It's going to be pay-per-view. It's going to be pay-per-view. Tank Davis versus Leo Santa Cruz, pay-per-view. Wilder versus Fury 3. Fury versus Wilder 3, excuse me. Pay-per-view. Terrence Crawford, if you fight Kell Brook, will fuck around and be pay-per-view over here in the States. Not to mention, the other fights that can be, the fights after. It's going to be a mess. It's going to be a mess. And that's the structure of boxing. UFC has their pay scale. Yeah, by the way, follow me on Twitter at TstreeT for life. My last one, got deleted, long story, but, UFC pay scale, with their pay scale, it's the reason why they're able to put on pay-per-views, with clothes, a fight like, Ferguson versus Gaethje with no fans, because the pay scale shit is not like that in boxing. Anyway, I'm going to be pumping out more videos. I'm not with all fantasy matchups and all that type bullshit, but we're going to be pumping out some videos. I'm TstreeT Controversy with FightView360.com. We cover every single major fight live. Please subscribe.